is my honor this evening to introduce our guests of honor, Jyotish and Devi, who are here to share with us in this wonderful evening that we also scheduled so that we could all come together in their company. It has been often said that when the founder of an organization passes, then everything about that organization will also pass, and pass quickly. Swamiji did the very best he could in the way that he organized Ananda to pass responsibility into the hands of those who were willing to take it and had an understanding of what Ananda was supposed to be. He also created a very decentralized way of organizing so that individual creativity could have a continuous voice, because this was also an important part of the way he trained us in Master's teachings, which was that each one of us is equal before God and equally capable of receiving divine inspiration. And often the heart and spirit goes out of a group because that capacity for inspiration gets increasingly isolated in very few. And then the creative spirit and the power of the individual gets diluted. But there was another reason that Swamiji, another important aspect of the way Swami put Ananda together for after his passing, was he said we always need to have dynamic, clear, irrefutable living examples of what the Ananda ideal looks like when it's lived. And when he decided to offer that position to Jyotish, and because Jyotish and Devi have always been partners for decades together, by extension it also goes into Devi. Swami remarked that there's one person in Ananda that everybody recognizes that needs no explanation from me. He said, as representing the heart, spirit, soul of Ananda, and that is Jyotish. And he was right. Without a moment's hesitation, every member of Ananda just simply agreed and knew that Devi would be with him, and that together the future of Ananda would be safe. Those of us who are of an age at this point to have seen Ananda from its early years, I look at my friends, and by my genetics, my hair is still brown, but I'm still white-haired like all my friends are. And I look at the two of them, and the thought that comes to me is really simple. We were young when we came, and now we're not young anymore, and we're still here. And there are many things that one can say in tribute, but perseverance alone is one of them. But it also speaks to the power of attunement, that never in all these years have they looked aside, looked in any other direction except where Swami was leading. And that alone is such a gift to all of us. We are deeply honored to have the two of you with us tonight. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Asha and Narayani. And how glorious it was to hear the music of Alfonso and Swamiji. You know, one could hear in that music the vibration of Swamiji, but the vibration almost as if channeled from a different age that was flatter. His melodies in this incarnation are freer and greater in range, but the medieval times didn't quite allow or appreciate that, but you could still hear behind it the vibration of Swami. And so beautifully performed. Thank you for doing that. And thank you, Asha, for the beautiful introduction. But I must say that Swamiji essentially magnetized a whole generation. And then beyond that generation, he magnetized everybody that he came in contact with. Many people who met him but had not very much contact with him would say to us, "The dearest friend I have on earth is Swami Kriyananda." Or, "I never felt love fully enter my heart until I came into Swami's presence." And so he had that vibration that reached out and included everybody that he met, and yet there was a particular mission that he came with in order to bring Master's mission into greater fruition. In fact, I won't steal her thunder. Devi is going to be writing a book about just that. And so maybe she'll mention it when she speaks. But coming back, there is another theme that is there through Swami's incarnations. And that's the importance of sacred spaces. Obviously, it's there also in Master's incarnation. But if you look back to their incarnation in England, one of the things that they did was to found churches and monasteries and create sacred spaces, because they knew that people needed to come together in a holy place in order to receive the kind of magnetism. There's a very interesting part in Autobiography of a Yogi where, unless you kind of are looking for it, you might miss it. But it's on the trip where Master goes to the Kali temple, and he has the beautiful vision of Mother Kali, and where Ramakrishna had lived, and along with him on that trip is his sister and brother-in-law. And you probably remember the aspect where his brother-in-law was skeptical, was very upset that he hadn't arranged for lunch, and what an irresponsible character this is, and what are we going to do? And then a priest came and brought the lunch. But prefacing that, the sister had begged Swami to do something to change his brother's consciousness, because he was skeptical and sarcastic and negative about her beliefs. And Master said, well, let's go to an environment that is uplifting, because it will be easier to change his consciousness in an uplifting environment. And that's why they went there, because he was, on behalf of his sister, helping his brother-in-law become open, and indeed his brother-in-law did become open. But I say that because of the importance of sacred space, the importance it has in helping a person, even though they may not know it themselves, helping a person to change their consciousness by coming into a place that uplifts the mind, uplifts the consciousness. And it's, as we were saying last night, we do not create our thoughts, we perceive them. But we perceive them according to the level of our consciousness. And so a person who's perhaps skeptical or scattered or maybe slightly interested, here in Palo Alto, busy, finally they either come on their own or they get convinced to come. They come into this sacred space. All of a sudden their consciousness is uplifted, and they're tuning into different thoughts. And tuning into those different thoughts, they begin to think, oh, this really is a precious thing. I feel good being here. we were just in Portland, and there was a couple that we met there, and the man, the husband of this couple, had grown up in Encinitas, and he had gone somewhat to SRF, and then it had fallen away, but he had some familiarity with Master's teachings. And then he happened to have an apartment that he rented across the street from the Portland community. And he and his wife would walk by, and they'd see Ananda community based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. But he never quite felt drawn enough to come in to see what was going on, other than a little bit of curiosity. And then the time came, and they bought a house, they moved to a completely different part of Beaverton, a block away from the Ananda Center. And so even his thick skull, he said, he began to think, well, maybe there's some message here. So one Sunday, they decided, well, let's go and just see what it's like. And they went, and they didn't say much to each other afterwards, but the next Sunday came around, they said, maybe we should try that again. They went in, again, the upliftment of sacred space. They went into that. Now they're members, they're about to take discipleship, they're on the path to Kriya Yoga, and they're supporting members, and they're serving all of the time. But the change comes from being in a place that allows upliftment. This is the place for that, for masters, vibration through Swami in the Bay Area here, in Palo Alto especially. Obviously, we've gathered together because we're all going to work together to keep this place in good repair. But I'd want to emphasize, first of all, the importance of that. When I first met Swamiji, it was Easter Sunday, 1967, and soon after that, after that meeting, I took his classes again and again and again, because it was the only way to have contact. But soon after that, we started going to Ananda. At that time, it was the meditation retreat was first of all, Swami's apartment was all of Ananda. Then the meditation retreat was the place. And so we would go up, once a month, sometimes twice a month, to work on the property. But what did we work on? What was he doing on the property? Very first thing, building a temple. Now, he didn't know how to build, and I didn't know how to build, and the first one collapsed. The second one was a little bit stronger, and the wind decided to pick that one up in whole and take it over and collapse it. So it wasn't that we didn't even get to the point where those temples needed to be repaired like this one. But nonetheless, the principle is there that the very first thing, the first expression, is to create sacred space. And it is a wonderful part of our life to be able to participate in maintaining or building sacred space. But even more important is what happens here. It's very symbolically beautiful. Master said that temples and churches, they're like hives, beehives. And you can have an empty beehive, and what good is it? It's a bunch of wax. But he said the hive of a temple needs to be filled with the honey of self-realization. How wonderful it is that today started with the 2-hour meditation and is ending with this event where we can all join together to help maintain this very, very important and very powerful sacred space for all of for all of the Bay Area and all of Ananda. Everyone, the first large trip I took with Swamiji, we started out, it was around the world trip, 1974. We started out by flying to Kauai, and there was a teacher there. Master Subramanya was his name, and he had an ashram on the island of Kauai. And our first stop was there, and we visited him. He said something beautiful as we were leaving. He said, we have our center here and our light, and what you have done is you have come and joined your light to our light, and now those two lights are combined. Now as you go around the world, take your light and our light together, and wherever you stop, offer those combined lights, but then accept the light of wherever you stop. And as you go around the world, tie the world together with strings of light. Isn't that beautiful? Well, the physical manifestation of those strings of light, the real manifestation is the consciousness of devotees. Master said, I see my Kriya bonds as twinkling lights scattered all over the globe. Those are the real lights, but the physical manifestation are the temples and teaching centers where people come to receive the teachings and be uplifted. And those are extremely important to the evolution of the planet. The masters knew how important these sacred spaces were. For us to be able to participate in, for tonight, we're going to ask for funds to help repair and maintain this temple, which was lovingly built in I think the 1940s is what I had heard. And so obviously it needs repair. Now, why should we help in that? I mean, if Babaji wants the repair to be done, he could just manifest the repair. Like if he can manifest a golden palace, he can certainly fix a roof or put in a new carpet. So what does he need us for? He doesn't need us. We need him. We need to help. Because when we receive from the divine, first the process is that we need to, a little bit like beggars, hold up a cup to receive. But a cup can only hold the capacity of that cup. Sometimes it's a thimble, sometimes it's a cup, sometimes it might even be a gallon jug, but it still is a finite capacity. Until we open up that container by our service, by our support, by our giving, it can't hold anymore. But when we open it up and we complete that circuit, it can hold an infinite amount. I mean, it could nearly, if you had enough pressure, drain an ocean through a container. But it can only do that when it's opened up. Our job is to open up ourselves. And in supporting a great work, supporting the light of Master, supporting these sacred spaces, we ourselves are changed. Swami said, the whole of the spiritual path is simple. It is the dissolving of the ego. That's what the spiritual path is. So wherever we come up to a little impediment of, oh, I don't want to do that, or I have a barrier here, God provides a way for us to break through that. And so the more we do that, the more we give, the more we give, the more we become not a cup, not even a jug, but we become an infinite channel for the divine to flow through. But without completing that cycle, we don't grow. We were talking about a book earlier about Lahiri Mahashaya's life, and it just occurred to me there was a very interesting story. Lahiri Mahashaya, as we all know, was the first person to bring Kriya Yoga to the public. And as we still do, when Lahiri offered a Kriya initiation, he asked for a donation for that Kriya initiation. Now, the interesting part, we would say, well, of course, that's interesting. The interesting part was that Babaji told Lahiri to collect that, and then whenever they met, to give him those donations. Now, Babaji didn't need the donations. He could create a golden palace. But for the sake of the devotees, they needed to complete that cycle of returning back to the source of their inspiration, to the source of their divine gift. And it's in the completion of that cycle that the ego is dissolved gradually, or depending on how eagerly we give away any sense of limitation, the ego is dissolved gradually or more quickly. But I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for participating, but to emphasize how important it is, not only for the Palo Alto area that this temple exists, but how important it is for each of us individually to help in the process of allowing this sacred space to exist. And in that, it's really Babaji who is flowing through this whole line of work, through all of our lineage, and especially through Master, and then Swamiji, and through, as Asha was saying, through all of us. It's that purity of attunement and purity of giving that allows the presence of this great lineage to be here and change, uplift the entire planet. But even Babaji needs temples. And so thank you for helping with this particular temple. And we have them all over the world, and they're little sources of light, and we're stringing the whole planet with these sources of light together. And so you visit ours, we visit yours, and we all mix together, and pretty soon the planet won't know itself. God bless you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for those who organized this weekend. It's just been marvelous. We have just had the most wonderful time being with all of you and sharing friendship. Some of you we've known for many, many years. Some of you we've met more recently, but it's just been like a family reunion for us. It's just been marvelous. And I want to thank Asha for the beautiful introduction. I was very touched. And you know, when Narayani was speaking, it was so interesting listening about Ferdinand and Alfonso, and how she said to us afterwards, she came over being the delightful, humble soul that she is. And she said, was that okay? And we said, oh, Narayani was marvelous. But she said something that she didn't share in when she was up here. She said, the time that Alfonso was reigning as the king of Spain, it was a difficult time. People were having hardships. There was instability. There was poverty. But what Alfonso tried to do was to create a new culture, which was based on joy and upliftment and friendship and creativity and refinement of consciousness. Well, this is the same thing we see in the other life of William the Conqueror and his son Henry I, who is again Master and Swamiji, creating a new culture. In fact, the government of England that William the Conqueror created and William of Normandy, I think is a better way to call him. And then Henry Furthered is the longest established government in global history. That's what they did. They created a new culture, a stability out of the Middle Ages, which was, poverty. And I love that the only invention that came out of the Middle Ages, of Kali Yuga, was the wheelbarrow. And then we hit Dwapara Yuga, and whoa, it never stopped. But now we are in a different time, but nevertheless a troubled time. We see poverty, we see homelessness, we see division, we see war, we see confusion, the diminution of the arts and of culture. And Swami brought a culture. He brought refinement. You read his books. I never ceased to be amazed. I was just in preparation for the talk we had to give. I was reading The Artist as a Channel that Swami wrote. So profound, so brilliant, so much reference to historical events. And I remember when I came to him right after I finished college, and I did well in college. I was a Phi Beta Kappa with honors and all that. But when I heard him speak, I thought, everything I ever wanted to learn, this man knows. The rest of my college education was totally worthless. It had no meaning for me. But Swami brought to us was a new culture in our time that will survive the transitional period of Dwapara. It's a vision of the future. One of his most overlooked books, but tremendously profound, is The Time Tunnel, where he talks about traveling back and forth. And it seems like it's a children's book, but it's not a children's book. He's showing us visions of the future and the past and the future and traveling through time, because he was aware of that. He was aware of traveling through time, maybe not the specifics, but he knew that what he was bringing, what Master was bringing through him, was a vision of the future. And we need to understand that we need to help create this future. He left it in our hands. And what I have seen over, 50 years plus of being a part of Ananda is that those who dive in, I'm all in. Whatever is asked of me on any level, I say yes to. We have a wonderful young woman who lives at Ananda Village now. I won't say her name because she tells me I always embarrass her. But she had a certain background, and then she was asked to take on, there was an opening of a very important department, and we didn't have anybody to fill it, vitally important. And they asked her to do it, and I called her later that day after they had asked her. I said, "What did you say?" She said, "What do you mean? They asked me." I said, "Yes." And she's doing a marvelous job, but we need to find ways, hello, it's somebody we know from many years ago, 45 years ago. We need to find ways to say yes. And every time you say yes, you break, as Jyotish was saying, the whole spiritual path is dissolving the ego. And every time you say yes, you push through that barrier, the ego begins to dissolve. It's as simple as that. And so often Swami would ask us to do things that we just had no idea how to do them. But if we would say yes, we would all of a sudden understand how to do it. There was a cartoon, I don't know how many of you know Daffy Duck, but it's a cartoon from my generation. But there was one cartoon where the bad guy was chasing Daffy, and he was running really fast. He was running so fast that his little legs started rotating, and he took off, like a airplane taking off. And then he turns to the audience as an aside, and he said, "I'm so crazy, I don't know, this is impossible." And that's what Ananda has always seemed like to me. It's like, I'll say yes, even though I have no idea how to do it. And that's where the ego dissolves little by little. And so just to say yes to what you all have been building for decades here and to keep it vibrant. And I'll just close with a beautiful story that I read many years ago, but it always brings me inspiration. And it's when we're building a work for God, yes, we have to support temples of light, beacons of light, but the real building comes on an inner level. And there's a story of a medieval monastery that at one time had been a flourishing center of devotion and service. But as time went by, the monks began aging. Some of them began passing away, and new people weren't coming. And what had been a vibrant center just diminished and diminished till it was just a handful of old monks. And the head of the monastery said, we must do something. And he knew of a saint, a reputed saint that lived in the forest, but he had a wonderful reputation of being very holy and spiritual and visionary. And so he said, I must go ask this monk what we should do to rebuild the monastery. And so he went into the forest. No one knew exactly where he lived. Finally, he found a little hut, and there was the saint living there. And he told him our monastery is diminishing, and we can't draw new people, and we don't have funds. We don't know what to do. And the saint was very, very sympathetic. Oh, that's too bad. I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, and he said, well, what can we do? He said, well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. And the head monk was rather disappointed because he didn't get any guidance from this man that was supposed to be all wise. And so he said, well, thank you very much. And he was just leaving the little hut. And the holy man said, oh, by the way, one of you is the Messiah. And the head monk thought, well, that's a strange thing to say. And he came back to the handful of monks in the monastery. And they said, well, what did he say? What did the holy man say? He said, he didn't have any advice for me. It was not really very fruitful. But it was odd. Just as I was leaving, he said, one of you is the Messiah. And they all kind of laughed, but they went back to their little cells and they began thinking, I know I'm not the Messiah, but maybe it's Brother Joseph. He's such a kind, patient man. And he began treating Brother Joseph with great reverence. And Brother Joseph thought, well, I know it's not me, but maybe it's Brother Francis. And he began treating Brother Francis with great reverence. And on and on and on. And they all began treating each other as if they were the Messiah. And then somehow the light that they drew from that holy reverence for each other began growing and growing, and young people started to come, and they began to have picnics on the lawn. And then one would come and say, what are your practices here? Maybe, can I try to live here? And they would come, and time went by, and the monastery was totally rebuilt to a center of great spiritual presence and power, because they treated each other as one of them had God within them. And so we must do too. Yes, we can repair the roof, and we need to. Yes, we can put a new carpet in, and we need to. But when people come, will they notice the carpet? Maybe, maybe not. But they will notice the reverence with which you relate to one another, and they will know that this temple is a true beacon of light. So enjoy this beautiful center and community that God has given you, and keep raising the vibration, because that's what draws the grace of God.
I don't know how many times already this weekend I've said thank you to the two of you But I think we all know those words mean all of what it could mean. It's not a simple thank you. I've watched this whole weekend as people's energy, consciousness, really a level of joy has just risen through a conversation, a smile, a hug. You've brought so much here. And these talks were just, I have less to say than I thought I was going to say, because really it's been said. So thank you so much for being with us. I do want to thank everyone who's here for being here. As the temple was filling, I had that feeling that I've had so many times, and many of you have heard me say this, long before the event starts, you can feel that it's already a success. And it's a success not in the numbers of dollars that we're going to be able to collect tonight, because we don't know what that is, but it's a success in the energy that all of you have brought individually, whether you were cooking or serving drinks, or you just decided to put this night aside to come here individually, and then collectively, what this family is. It's huge, it's big, there's big energy here. And somebody said to me as we were walking in before, forgive me, whoever you are, oh, I think it was Puneet. He said, this temple just looks, none of you were here yet, so there was no color conflict. But he said, look at this temple looks golden. I've never seen it like this, but the energy was just building. I mean, just look, these beautiful tablecloths, these centerpieces, this extraordinary altar. It's really what happens, what we feel, how inspired we feel when we realize what it took, even to just say, hey, we really need new carpet in here. Can you make something cute on the altar about carpeting? And I have to say, everybody got mad at me, a little mad as we get at each other, in a staff meeting that we had, because we actually really do need new air conditioning and heating system. In fact, I don't think it even works in here right now, but in the teaching center too. I said, put a fan on the dais. It's okay, let them see. We need a better version of this, because we do. And if we all just say it and call it what it is, it doesn't need to be fancy. We could have put a bow on an HVAC and said, who wants to buy this for the temple? But, this building was built in 1940. Asha was telling us earlier this morning that somehow, she knew because, of course, she was here when it was bought, along with a number of other people, that the building was put together by a particularly talented group of all different kinds of people, whoever needed to participate, whatever goes into building a building, but basically the structure of it, that it was going to last a long time. And I feel that when I'm in here. I feel the strength of this temple. It just feels exactly like what she said. But that was 1940. They did a great job, and the walls aren't going to fall down, but the roof does need replacing. And just on cue, it was so perfect. Esther, who has been just spectacular. She made every bit of this food, obviously with a lot of help. And it was superb, and it was served in a beautiful way, but she tripped over there. And that beautiful bean dish that was very red and had greens running through it is now part of the carpet back there. I said, look at that, how perfect. Now we can say, yes, we need a carpet. We bought this building from the Catholic Church in 1984. And I came my first seva here, I don't remember what year it was still filled with pews. And I had a very busy medical practice up in San Carlos. But every Thursday at noon, I would close the practice and I would come here and I would polish the pews all afternoon, every Thursday. It was a great joy. It looked very different at that time. I remember that, and I remember caring so much about what those pews looked like. I remember, as I'm sure many of you do, when we put this beautiful third eye up here. It wasn't that many years ago. It wasn't here. I remember when these symbols of all religion were made. I remember when we did this gold leaf painting on the edges here. None of it sounds like much, but we're just doing the next iteration of all of that. The biggest part of what that was is people who had vision, people who cared, people who wanted to create beauty and a sacred space, and they're not separate. Swamiji loved beauty. It wasn't an actual attachment on the material plane, the way it is for many people, but he loved beautiful things. And I don't know this, but I think he must have felt how it went into helping to create that sacred space. Lakshmi often says to me, she's often in here, very often, vacuuming, cleaning. I mean, she does a lot of that level of work along with everything else she does. And she says, we just can't have service. We can't invite the masters in here. We can't want master or Swamiji to come in and not have it look as beautiful as we can have it. And that's the truth. And what's a bigger truth than all of that is that if we can tune in and see the divine in each other, then we would want this space to be that beautiful, to be running that perfectly, that easily, all the time, because we're inviting God in all the time. So it is about money. Of course, it's about money. Money is a form of energy. But as Swamiji so beautifully says, I've just been telling Jyotish Devi, we're having a class right now on Swamiji's Secrets of Prosperity little book. So 30 secrets. We're up to about 7 or 8, I don't know, somewhere around there. He's never mentioned money. He's talking about prosperity, but he's talking about prosperity in an entirely different way than the world typically thinks of it. And that's what we're here talking about and doing. Yes, it does come down to, I don't know if it was Jyotish or Devi who said, we might not notice a new carpet, but I hate to differ with them. If we had a great Ananda blue carpet in here again, this carpet's many decades old now. So it will be beautiful. We want that to happen, but we want it to happen in a way that each of you feel uplifted, not drained, that each of you feel like absolutely, no matter what the amount is that you put on these cards tonight, that's way less meaningful than the energy with which you do it. Right attitude. Master said, you cannot step onto the spiritual path. You wouldn't think, his words, not mine, to move onto a spiritual path without right attitude. So I would like to, we do have displays that you'll be able to come up and see. I think Lakshmi will talk about that in just a moment. But what I would like to ask us to do right now is this. Let's each of us take a few minutes. We'll listen to Swamiji chanting. Let's just sit before we do any writing or any decision making. Ask Master Swamiji, what is it that's right for me? What is going to raise and expand my energy? And then, as we do in meditation, listen for that answer. and it'll be different for everybody. But if we can get quiet and listen and feel the inspiration behind whatever we decide to bring here tonight, to give tonight, then it is the perfect amount. There is no one perfect amount, but whatever it is that comes to you as we sit and as we listen to Swamiji, I think we can all feel guided by that which will be the best for us and the best for all of what has to happen in this temple. So really, this is a wonderful family to be a part of. I'm just so grateful that each and every one of you are here. We're in this together. The truth is, if we need to live with this carpet for another 10 or 20 years, we will. But the fact that we showed up here, that we're here, that we're engaged as we are, is really the most important piece. Everything else will follow from there. So thank you, and God bless you all.
My Lord, I will be thine always. My Lord, I will be thine always. I may go far, farther than the stars.